This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, miniatures, and paints, discount prices at miniaturemarket.com.
Hey everybody, it's your old pal Rob. It's a funny thing. Today I was kind of digging around and trying to clean some space here, and I ran into a bunch of stuff I painted, my God, years ago. And it was the old Warmachine stuff, which was so far ahead of its time for what it did. This was a game that you know, Privateer Press, who started back in 2000. Actually, they were actually doing supplements for D&D, and in 2003 they decided to break out the Iron Kingdoms. Now you have to understand what was going on during this time, and I'm going to just take a sip here so I don't have to reshoot it. But in 2003 was a weird time because GW was completely down, and I mean way down. They didn't care. You know how GW does its wave thing, and when Privateer Press broke out with Warmachine Iron Kingdoms, or it was, I believe it was Warmachine Prime. You got to forgive me, I'm doing this all from the top of my head. GW was here, before they do that big turn. And it was an opportune time because what they were able to do is they were able to take one of their artists, one of their head painters, and bring them into the company. And they came up with this game that was really unique. You had warcasters, which were basically your generals, and they would have this focus, and what the focus would do was control these warjacks. Now, you would be able to move the warjacks, but you couldn't do any of their special abilities unless you applied focus. And the fascinating part of that was that on the other side you're saying, well, gee, if he gives a whole bunch of focus to him, I know that he has this ability, and how do you counteract that? And the main thing is that, for years and years and years and years, GW always claimed that, you were the general of the army. Well, being the warcaster, you really were, because if you got your warcaster killed, you lost. There were other things, win conditions in the game, but ultimately it was a game of trying to get objectives or whatever. But if you lost your warcaster, and at the end of a certain amount of rounds, both warcasters were standing, well, then you would go to the objectives. But if you lost your warcaster, that was it. And it made for a unique feel to the game where you were actually the general of these particular armies. The miniature started out as metal. It was very heavy metal. It was the white metal, and which nowadays is so expensive to do. But back then, you got a warjack. It was you paid big bucks for it, but you felt you got something. And then they eventually, and some of the things that I think led to some of their decline, I don't want to say complete downfall until we get later on here, was the fact that they went to a plastic that wasn't mold injected. It was like a cheaper plastic. And you have to understand, back in the day, to be a contender against GW was not the easiest of things to do. And yet this small little company, Privateer Press, was able to really put GW back on their heels. Well, some of the problem with that is that sometimes when you make enough noise, you wake up the giant in the room. And that's exactly what happened, because here they came with a new edition of fantasy, which was Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar at the time, a smaller skirmish. They took some of the things that they saw that Warmachine was doing very successfully, and they just decided to do an entire new universe. Warmachine also won Origins Awards, which was a big deal at a time, because the game was just, it was revolutionary. But as time went on, they started to try to diversify and spread themselves out. They came out with the absolute failure of Level 7, which boasted some of the worst miniatures I've ever seen in my life. As well as Monster Apocalypse, which was successful but yet not in a way. They spread themselves out a bit much, and I think that kind of hurt them for a while. Now, as time went by, they came out with more and more supplements for this, and what hurt was they just didn't have the capital to really compete. They couldn't do the injection molding, which is a big cost up front, a massive cost up front. And while they continually released and were and very loyal to releasing new products, it just kind of fell flat to what GW had woken up and turned their company around again. Finally, the last couple of years ago, instead of rebuilding or redoing everything, they decided to go the 3D printing model. Now, while this is just becoming a thing of the future, it's not here right now all the way. It's still expensive. And the company has become more of a digital and has fallen even farther. Lack of capital, lack of seeing a massive decline in recent years. People have gone to the booths and seen that it was a tenth of what Pirateer Press used to be, and it's a shame because this was a company that was innovative and very brave in everything they did, and they should be commended for what they've done. Their recent line that they've put out is just uninspiring, and it's a game, unfortunately, that has died a horrible death, in my opinion. When you look at Warjacks, you go, oh, really cool, mechanical figures. Well, with the rise and resurgence of BattleTech, that kind of took that away. And then, of course, the newer editions of Warhammer 40K and everything else that they've put out has really put a damper on any kind of momentum that they could possibly capture. And this 3D printed model for Mark IV just didn't work out, and it's a shame. There were just so many people that were behind it and loved it and had a passion for it. I remember watching Wargamer Girl, Miranda, and how much she loved it, and I don't even think she plays it that much anymore, even though I know that she probably still has a deep love for her Khador. That channel really excelled at showing off how great Warmachine was back in the day, but time, money, and some decisions that I don't think helped had brought this game to a complete standstill where we stand today, and kind of almost it's almost like a eulogy I'm giving. I'm sure it still has its loyal fans, but looking at this stuff, I'm like, what do I do with it now? And a real shame at that. Again, a game that I'm very heartbroken about, that it is no longer, really on the cutting edge. It does feel very 2003, 2008, and I have so much painted of it, and maybe or all the books and everything, maybe just put it away and maybe come back to it in 5 or 10 years, and who knows, maybe GW will be on the decline again, and I'll break it out, and boom, there you go, something to refresh, kind of like what I do with Silent Death and some of those older miniature games that die unfortunate deaths. But this was a company that was so close to taking out GW at one point. If they had the capital, if they had, I couldn't tell you what the right answer would have been, but they were the closest ones that ever contended with the big beast that is Games Workshop. And, to see them in the state that they are now, it is just very, very sad. So, until next time, my dear friends, it's your old pal Rob. We'll see you soon, everybody.